I'm Judy.
Well, that makes me Warren. We're Judy and Warren Waldron. We come down to you from northwestern corner of Butler County, up near Oxford. And it's delightful to be down here with you in Reading.
We've been here before. We come
Home
every
of Gorman
fall.
Farms.
Yeah.
Yes, and we often play at their Sunflower Festival. So it's always a lot of fun. Our thing is old-time music and a little bit of bluegrass mixed in there. And as we're billed as the history of country music in an hour, we brought a lot of accessories with us to sort of show you the trends that were moving along through the folk music, the vernacular music of rural people.
How many have you watched Ken Burns' country music? So we're trying to do that in an hour.
Well, Ken Burns had 8 episodes, 2 hours each, and he got about that deep into something that's huge. So we're sitting there like, okay, where's Uncle Dave Macon in that, Ken? But oh well, he did a good job. I'm not criticizing. He did a marvelous job, and I learned a lot watching that. So anyway, we thought we'd start just where music might start in your home. Back in the old days, if you wanted to have music in the house, you had to make it yourself. And so people would do that however they could, and one way was just using your voice. And so we're going to sing an old ballad that we've become fond of called The Soldier and the Lady.
It's supposed to tell you how to live your life.
Well, it's a sort of a cautionary tale in a way.
Yes,
but
you'll hear it.
It's pretty nice. One morning in May, I spied a young couple going their way. One was a lady so fair. The other was a soldier and a brave volunteer. Said the soldier to the lady, "Oh, where are you a-going?" "Down by the orchard, just down by the spring. Down by the orchard, just down by the spring. To see the water flow and hear the nightingale sing." They had not been there but 1 hour or 2, when out of his satchel a fiddle he drew. He played a message that made the hills ring. "Hark, hark," said the lady, "hear the nightingale sing." Said the lady to the soldier, "Will you marry me?" "Oh no, my fair maiden, that never can be. I have a wife in Columbus and children twice 3. One wife and the army's too many for me. Come all you fair maidens, take warning from me. Never place your affection on a green growing tree. Never place your affection on a soldier so free. For he will deceive you like mine deceived me."
That's it.
So if you were lucky or talented or whatever, you might have a fiddler in your family or in your neighborhood. And that provided you with music for dancing. And there are no shortage of dance reels and tunes available. And they've been written down in books down through the centuries, I guess. But we all learn them by ear. So we just find somebody who knows how to play, and we study with them.
As the folks moved over here from England, Scotland, Ireland, Western Europe, they brought their fiddles and they brought their tunes with them.
They also brought their fifes, and fifing was very popular because it was a pretty much indestructible instrument. You could pack it in your grip or in your pocket, and you had it, And I've run into fife and drum bands are still pretty popular in the East. eastern states, especially in New England.
So what tune
So
you
I'm
gonna
going to play an old Scottish tune here called Money Musk. Oh, I'm stuck.
Just take it home. Money.
Money Musk. Well,
We often play for contra dancing, which is old English line dances straight across from one another. And we play at Wyoming. They have the Wyoming Arts Center. In a big band, I play piano, and he plays the fiddle, and we have another mandolin player and a flute player. And we only play once every 3 months, because there's so many bands in Cincinnati that play for that kind of dance music.
we're in the rotation.
It's in the rotation.
The
Yeah,
rotation. That's a good thing, because it's good that so many people are taking up traditional music and carrying it on. In this, my father's old laundry bag from college,
Oh.
I'm bringing my dear friend.
So from,
Because we're doing the history of country music.
this is very.
Tell me what
much a
this
part of it.
is. This is a banjo. This is
And
a
it
gourd
is a gourd.
banjo. This is what banjos looked like in the 1700s through the early part of the 19th century. African origins. And this is a replica of a banjo that's featured in a painting by a fellow whose name escapes me, John Rose,
Well,
I
where
think.
is it? Where is it?
Um,
This is, what's that village in East?
Oh, Williamsburg.
Williamsburg.
It's called The Old Plantation, and it's a painting, a color painting, painted by the plantation owner, actually, of his slaves having a party, and one of them's playing
This-
an instrument that looks like this, even to where the texture of the gourd, because this was made by a fella in Baltimore, Pete Ross, and he sought out this California gourd, so because it had the right coloring. A tack head, bone nails hold the skin on. It's all wood. The neck is out of a over 200-year-old house that was raised in Baltimore, and so he salvaged wood so that he had something like that. So anyway, it was they called him the old 3-string. Oh, I've got to put the bridge up on it.
This was before the Roebling Bridge. This is before there was metal.
So we've got all natural ingredients, gut strings, and I'll play an old tune that
What's
was,
that little short string?
oh, well, this is the drone string.
Turn it so I can see the, yeah.
See that short guy there? That's what we've come to call the 5th string. But in fact, the 5th string was added about 1846, 42, 40, somewhere in there. the bass string, the lowest string on the banjo is the newest string on the instrument.
And all these banjos you see here have that little fifth string. That's the African thing that brings.
So I was going to play a tune that we feel pretty much came over with the African folks, and it's called Sandy Boys. There you have it, folks.
It's a pretty unique sound.
It is, yeah. I could sit and play this thing all night, but we only have so much time. So
But it does, yeah, it's got
I'm
that
gonna
skin
hold down the
head.
bridge again.
That makes it, and gorge sound. If you look at like Gambia, now there's still people playing, they
Those
call them
kind-
contings. Really a long neck, but it's gourd and has a short string, so you know.
So next in the lineage
Yes,
is this guy.
American ingenuity.
We got the bass string on there now.
What do you
Oh,
mean?
well. These were made by cabinet makers, gunsmiths, anybody who worked well with wood, because the popularity of that instrument became so great amongst the white folks, they just couldn't get enough of it. You know, they'd scoot down to Jackson Square in New Orleans. Back then they called it Congo Square. And same sort of stuff goes on there today that went on then. Fire eaters, circus performers, musicians, magicians, all that sort of thing. And these guys would study to try to learn how to play these banjos. And so there became quite this one is a replica again of a guy by the name of William Boucher. His dad ran a cabinetry shop, and young William took to making these. They knew how to steam wood. This is oak, and they bent it into a wooden rim, and which they were good for drum making and stuff like that. So if they could make a drum, they could make a banjo. And so they made the by hand all the hardware, stretched a skin across it, and well, there you have it. So and then Joel Walker Sweeney is credited with adding the fifth
The
string.
lowest note.
Yeah. So I'll play. What was I going to?
It's got strings. Okay. We think this is sort of a European song. Where's all my things?
See if we can pull this off here. This is called Jim Along Josie.
These are bones. Bones made out of wood. Before they were ribs or pals, that's what they used to use.
Oh yeah, rhythm
Or
bones.
jaws of animals and scrape along the jaws.
There we go. So
Just play it so I know how it goes. This is the song they all sing. Now way down south, not there far off, a bullfrog died of a big cough. Across Mississippi and we must know that's where I first called it home. Hey, get home, Jim along to see. Hey, get home, Jim along to see. Hey, get home, Jim along to see. All right.
Fun, isn't it? Again, gut strings, the whole thing made with the materials at hand in 1846 for this one.
So how long did the gut strings last?
Well,
I mean,
here's,
in terms of usage.
I'll tell you, on this banjo, if I break a string, I take it off and put a new one on. On this one, I've got a lot of string wrapped around here. And if the string's gonna break, it's either gonna break here or where I play it, most generally where I play it. It'll wear out and it'll break there. Then I'll just pay out some more line, tie a new knot, and I've still got string. So it's sort of like fishing, in a way. But, well, if you play it, the more you play it, the sooner they'll wear out. That's the way it is with gut. But
Now we're
you
into
can't
this
beat
kind
that
of
sound.
string. When was that, 1840s?
1846 for this guy.
This is 1928.
Baltimore, Maryland was
For real.
where Boucher made
That's
banjos.
not
And
an image.
you'll find these still around.
And that was open at the bottom, right?
Yes. Although Boucher made one, I've seen one, there's a painting called The Banjo Player by William Sidney Mount. And it has head on both sides.
Yeah.
A skin head on both sides. But mostly they were open back.
I guess.
People made banjos out of grain buckets and things, they'd saw it and put a head on it and put a neck on it and away they'd go.
Have a seat. There's time, we don't mind questions.
What are we
really.
doing?
So here, but we did try to get everything, we got a lot of stuff here. So.
Okay, so
ask
now
questions.
there's a big tradition in fiddling and banjo playing for the banjo and the fiddle to be a band.
This
That
is
was,
where the Americans
they just put them together.
put the music
in fact,
together, the banjo
yeah.
and the fiddle, all over the Appalachians mainly. So that's where our music is coming from, the Appalachians.
So this this tune is called, well, it's called Blue-Eyed Girl by a lot of the old timers. It's called Western Country by those who use that verse. I'm going to the Western Country. Of course, that's part of the reason we seceded from Great Britain. They wouldn't let us settle beyond the Appalachian Mountains. And we went over there and took a look around, thought that looked pretty good to us. So we had plenty of motivation to go over there. So,
Yeah, Georgia's stuff even got,
yeah, so Western Country is another, I'm going to the Western Country, that's where we live right now, is the Western Country.
so this banjo has got metal, obviously, and metal strings, and it's a drum head instead of.
Just for the historical content, 1867, Roebling started building the bridge across the Ohio River using cables. They had to make those cables, and that was kind of new technology. And so they made the cables, and then they liked it so much that the people in Brooklyn hired him to come over and build a bridge for them, and that required even more cable. So that they learned to make steel cable. That's why this banjo has steel strings, that's why the guitar has steel strings, is because they perfected making steel cable.
So things could be really tight, and my tone is going to be a lot higher than that beautiful, sweet lower.
Banjos and guitars had gut strings right up through the late 1800s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm still playing it the same way. Back through your fingernails, go down, over the back of your fingernails, go off with your thumb.
So we're going to play this tune, and it goes like
It's
this.
a dance tune. How does it go?
It's-
Fly
yeah.
around my blue eyes. Europe and Africa meet here with the two pretty European.
far away from here, with one arm around my old guitar and the other around my
Whiskey
dear.
cake. Fly around
My pretty miss, fly around my daisy, fly around my blue-eyed gal, you almost drive me crazy. 16 horses in my team as I go riding by. If I don't get old Susan Ann, I'll know the reason why. Fly around my blue-eyed gal, fly around my daisy, fly around my blue-eyed gal, you almost drive me crazy.
Well, thank you. Now we're coming into commercial country music. Not that people didn't play. Your man will his next instrument.
Yeah, but this thing's gone south on me, and I'm not going to let it get away with that.
We're going to be tuning so much.
Well, you turn on the lights and it changes everything, you know.
So the guitars came.
You know, they have to deal with this in Symphony Hall, too, I'm telling you.
Symphony, what would you know about that?
Just get up there and stand under those lights.
So anyway, the guitars came. The guitars have been around, as Warren said last night. They've been around. I said we're going to bring them in when they really came into the country music scene, because it was banjos,
Sears and Roebuck.
and Sears and Roebuck, and the Irish railroad workers. It's there.
Isn't this where you play the auto
I'm
harp?
getting in the commercial. Oh, I'm sorry. You get this. You can have the guitar. But anyhow, I'll tell you about the guitar. And people would sit at home and play their guitars and their fiddles, even though it wasn't recorded. But Victor figured, you want to
You
talk?
get the auto harp and I'll tell you.
Okay, good.
Okay, while she's busy doing that, those of you who watched the Ken Burns thing might remember Chet Atkins being asked, what does country music sound like? And you know what his answer was? He reached in his pocket, picked up some change, and shook his hand. Well, he was pretty much right, because the music industry, that's the way it works. It's money. That's what country music sounds like, is money. But not for us. Other people like Brenda Lee and June Carter and them, if you ask them, they'd tell you, oh, the country music is stories. It's stories. That's what that was. I mean, even Ray Charles said that. He said, why do you listen to country music? I love the stories. And all the women in that, Loretta Lynn, everybody, they all said stories. That's what.
So
And
tell
so
me about
here we
recording.
are. This.
Recording.
So what's going on now is we keep inventing things, and what we invented was phonograph records. Oh, now we got to put something on them, and people aren't just going to listen to speeches and things, you know. And so they put classical music on, they put Caruso on and stuff like that. And those, they sold well, but they wanted to reach the whole market, you know. So they got to thinking, well, these country people make music. Let's see what they do. And so there was, I think, Victor in Atlanta and Columbia up in New York City. And a guy named Ernest Stoneman, he would go up to New York and record up there. And Ralph Peer liked his stuff.
Country music?
Yeah, he was a country music guy. He played a number of things. He played auto harp, he played guitar, he played Pop Stoneman. He was the daddy of the Stoneman family. And if you watch Hee Haw, one of his gals was on that show. And he had a son who was a terrific fiddler. But anyway, he got to saying to Ralph Peer, he says, you know, if you could bring this stuff down to where I live, there's a lot of people down there who play, and you could make records of them too. So Peer got he could do that. By this time, he could put the stuff in a truck and take it down there. So these folks, they put ads in the newspaper saying, come to Bristol, Tennessee, and we will audition you for making records. So a lot of people, about 28, 30 people showed up with their outfits.
So A.P.
And,
Carter drugged his wife,
Sarah.
Sarah, and his cousin Maybelle, and she was 15, and
She said,
his
should I
wife
bring my
was
guitar?
pregnant. And they got in the car and they drove in a car. You saw it maybe on the TV, I don't know, and they got stuck in the river and everything. But they got over there with their auto harp, which is what this was. Sarah played it down in her lap like this, but Maybelle later on played it up like this so she could get the melody, so we're going to play it upright. And they recorded this song.
They recorded a bunch. Well, their stuff really kind of took off.
It's an old poem. It was written probably, I got all my dates mixed up. Mid-1800s. I will climb mid the ringlets of my waving black hair, with the roses so red and lilies so fair. The myrtle's sweet with the emerald hue, the pale and the leader, and I slip so blue. Where you taught me to love you, call me your flower, who was blooming to cheer you through life's dreary hour. Oh, now you have gone and left me all alone. The wildfires to repent, the wild birds to mourn. I shall dance, I will sing, and the heart shall be gay. I will charm every heart in this crown I slay. Though my heart is aching, he never will know how his name made me tremble, my pale cheeks aglow. I will dance, I will sing, my life shall be gay. I will cease this wild weeping, drive sorrow away. I'll live yet to see him regret the dark hour when he wanted and neglected his pale wildflower. Later, thank you. I love that song. I turned it around. I don't think they put that big a thing on the end, really. Those words were there, but they
There you
put them
go.
in the middle and ended up weeping, I think. I mean, that's how it is, but I just twisted it around and made a good ending like I wanted. Now, here's another one that was in the recording studios about the time the Carters were there.
One of the, they did this recording in Bristol, Virginia, Tennessee, yeah, for 2 weeks. So people had plenty of time the Carters came and went home. They came the second week, I think. Jimmy Rogers came with a band that he was in called the Tenova Ramblers. They had some kind of altercation and they wound up separating, and they threw Jimmy out of the band, I guess. So he decided he'd record anyway, just by himself. Well, we all know how that turned out. The guy could buy a great big house in Texas. So we're going to do one of his songs. This one dates from, he recorded this like in 1935. So he recorded some good numbers back in 27, but And he kept right on going because they couldn't get enough of Jimmy Rogers. So this one speaks of the Depression, because in 35 we were really in it. And people were hopping freight trains thinking that there was going to be work in the next town down the line. There wasn't work. There wasn't work down there or anywhere. So, but it inspired a lot of music. And this is one called Waiting for a Train.
By the way, Jimmy, that is a mandolin. That instrument there is a mandolin. He played guitar all throughout his.
And so far as I know, they never used a mandolin in any of his songs.
But maybe the Tennyson Ramblers did.
Right, but it's for us, it works. His stuff even started getting pretty jazzy.
Yeah.
In fact, one of my fiddle heroes, Clayton McMeechan, wrote a song called Peach Pickin' Time in Georgia. And that was a big hit for Jimmy Rogers.
Did Jimmy get TB?
Yes, that's what took him out. Let's see. There we go. All around the water tank, waiting for a train, 1,000 miles away from home, sleeping in the rain. I walked up to a brakeman to give me him a line of talk. He says, if you got money, I'll see that you don't walk. I haven't got a nickel, not a penny can I show. Get off, you railroad bum. And he slammed that boxcar door. De-yodelay, yodelay, de-yodelay. Well, it put me off in Texas, a place I dearly love. The wide open spaces all around me, the moon and the stars up above. Nobody seems to want me or to lend me a helping hand. I'm on my way from Frisco, I'm going back to Dixieland. Though my pocketbook is empty, not a penny is pain. I'm 1,000 miles away from home, waiting for a train. De-yodelay, yodelay, de-yodelay. Thank you. Oh, it's
Coon Creek Girls, Renfro
right.
Valley. Yep. Well, what happened first?
Well, I'll tell you what,
The Grand Ole Opry or Renfro Valley, or what happened, Warren? You know, you're the historian here. This is Historical Society.
Well, and we try to get it right, don't we, folks? Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so along with phonograph records, along comes radio. And it started out kind of primitive, you know, but the Grand Ole Opry, for example, started out as the barn dance. It was the WSM barn dance, instrumental music only. They got a fiddler in there and he'd play the fiddle, and that was it, you know, because they didn't have microphones that were very good for picking up voices. But that changed, and they came up with these electric microphones, and you could actually sing over the radio. And so stations popped up all over the place, and some of the most famous for country music was one up in Chicago, WLS, and they had the National Barn Dance. And it was so popular that people from Kentucky went trotting up there to get work. There were other places you could work too, but if you were lucky and auditioned, you could get on the radio. And Bill and Charlie Monroe went up there and got hired. And Lily Mae Ledford from Kentucky went up there, and she got hired too. And John Lair went up there because he wanted to start a radio show.
Where?
And
Anywhere.
well, he wanted to start a radio show, and he wanted it in Renfro Valley. But he went up and he snagged a few Red Foley and Lily Mae Ledford.
Here she is.
He got Lily Mae to form up be part of a group of women, and they called them the Coon Creek Girls. The Coon Creek Girls, yes. Now they did a good job. There were 4 of them, and they gave them the names of flowers like Lily Mae and Rosie and.
Okay, I'm ready.
And well, you know, you got to watch a banjo. It'll turn on you just like that, you know. But oh, wait a minute. I need one of them too. So they broadcast in Cincinnati over WLW. And they went to Dayton and Memorial Hall. They recorded there. And finally, he was raising money, and finally he built the barn down in Renfro Valley, and they moved down there. They were popular enough, though, that Eleanor and Franklin Roosevelt had them come in 1939 to Washington, D.C. to play for the King and Queen of England. This was nostalgic music in 1939, folks. This wasn't fresh out of it, but these gals were good at it. And Judy's going to sing you one of their numbers. Which one is it going to be?
Well, this is the one they did. This is one of the ones they did at the White House. It's called Banjo Picking Girl. And I didn't think the girls could do anything in this country music. I mean, you know, but what? We're pretty. So,
you know,
I was happy to hear that this was, I didn't know she did this song. And here we go, we're going to do it.
Just as an aside, Ralph Stanley learned to play banjo from his mother.
That's right. Here we go. I'm going round this world, baby mine. I'm
Going round this world, baby
I'll
mine.
sing along.
I'm going round this world.
Be a banjo picking girl.
Going round this world, baby mine.
Where am I gonna go? I'm going to Arkansas, baby mine.
Going to Arkansas, baby mine. I'm going to Arkansas.
You say here with Mom and Bob.
Going to Arkansas, baby mine.
There's a sharps. I just hurt my finger on the string. So I'm going to North Carolina, baby mine.
Going to North Carolina, baby mine. I'm going to North Carolina.
From there right on to China.
I'm going to North Carolina, baby mine.
I'm going to Tennessee, baby mine, baby. I'm
Going to Tennessee, baby mine. I'm going to Tennessee.
Don't you try and bother me.
I'm going to Tennessee, baby mine.
Let's see, where else will I go? I'm gonna cross the ocean, baby mine. I'm gonna cross the ocean, baby mine. I'm gonna cross the ocean if I don't change my notion. Gonna cross the ocean, baby mine. I like this. If you ain't got no money, baby mine. If
You ain't got no money, baby mine. If you ain't got no money,
get yourself another honey.
got no money, baby mine.
Let's go around the world. I'm going round this world, baby mine. Everybody on.
I'm going round this world, baby mine. I'm going round this world.
Be a banjo picking girl.
Going round this world,
baby mine. Okay, now that was, let's see, we're about 1938. That's when that big,
Whoopsie.
it's your guitar, honey, I'm sorry. I do it.
Yeah, it's on me.
What's next?
Well,
You said you could read
let's
that.
see. We're moving right along. Banjos kept being popular, they evolved into tenor banjos. This is, I'll stand up so everybody can see this. This is what I call the jazz age banjo. Because tenors became real popular and people were playing in jazz bands or in bands that had cornets and clarinets and trumpets and trombones and pianos and drums and electric guitars and things. And the banjo was a good rhythm instrument for those things and even lead, but they weren't loud enough. And so they were complaining to the store owner, you know, the music
not
shop.
loud enough?
And, well, yeah. And, you know, hasn't our society been getting louder and louder and louder? I mean, come on, folks, we're Americans here. So this wasn't just us, this was everybody. And so anyway, so they put a big pie plate on the back to help push the sound this way. This thing weighs about 25 to 30 pounds because it's got a brass tone ring in here, big brass tension hoop and this flange here to help the sound to come forward. And they'd use maple and mahogany and stuff to brighten it up and make it loud. So, of course, the manufacturers of the banjos, if you're going to make this pot for one, you're going to just put the same neck on all of them. And in those years, you had banjos that had the neck of guitars on them, tenor banjos. A plectrum banjo was this without the fifth string, same scale length. You had mandolin banjos, you had ukulele banjos. You'll see those all over the place. There was a big ukulele craze. And most all of them wound up with this kind of a business on the bottom. So they were loud enough, and the ones that were 5 strings, they had a big sound. And so the people who could afford them really liked to get their hands on one of these things.
Well, let's hear
So, well, yeah.
it. Can you play
So
that thing?
the most famous guy doing
Why
this
not
sort
just
of thing.
play
Now I got to say another thing.
I got something to say after
Even
that.
when this gut string banjo was around, there were 2 ways to play. There was the banjo way, which was what Judy was just doing, and then there was the guitar style, which is what Earl Scruggs mastered. And that's where you pick with your fingers. And for years, people always just used their index finger and thumb for the guitar style. But somewhere around the 30s, maybe even the 20s, people figured out that if you added your middle finger, it freed up the outside string, the highest string, and your index finger could do more interior work. And so 3 fingers became pretty much the norm, which like it is today. So I'm going to play a little number called Lonesome Road Blues, if I can remember how.
It's an old song.
You won't want that capo though.
Are you
This is
sure?
in G.
Oh.
So, let's see. I'm going down this long, lonesome road. I'm going where those little winds don't blow. I'm going down this long, lonesome road, oh Lord, and I ain't gonna be treated this way. I'm going down this road feeling bad. I'm going down this road feeling bad. I'm going down this road feeling bad, oh Lord, I ain't gonna be treated this way. I'm way down in jail on my knees. I'm way down in jail on my knees. I'm way down in jail on my knees, oh Lord, and they feed me on cornbread and beans. On down this road feeling bad. On down this road feeling bad. I'm going down this road feeling bad, oh Lord, and I ain't gonna be treated this way. I'm going where the climate suits my clothes. I'm going where the chilly winds don't blow. I'm going where the climate suits my clothes. knows, oh Lord, I ain't gonna be treated this way. I'm going down this road feeling bad. I'm going down this road feeling bad. I'm going down this road feeling bad, oh Lord, I ain't gonna be treated this way. I'm going down this road feeling bad.
That's Snickers bar.
I'm going down this road feeling bad. I'm going down this road feeling bad, oh Lord, and I ain't gonna be treated this way.
Oh, you know how it is.
Thank you, thank you.
Well, that sounds like bluegrass to me now.
Well,
What's
that's
it?
because that's what they come to call it after a while. Back when Earl recorded, you know, he and Lester, when they joined Bill Monroe's band, and for a couple of years they played with Bill, but the road just got to them. They weren't making that much money, and it was hard work, and so they both quit. And they were going to go back, Earl was going to go back and apply for the job in the textile mill, but they got to thinking about it, and they decided, why don't we start our own band? And so they did, and they got some pretty good, because Earl had made quite a name for himself over the radio, you know. I mean, everybody heard the Grand Ole Opry, heard Earl Scruggs in the Bill Monroe portion. And so they recorded right down here at the studio on Race Street. Name escapes me, but that's where they recorded some of their early stuff. And yeah, well, it wasn't King, but it was a studio that an engineer from WLW retired from WLW, and he started up this. It'll come to me, but it's still there, and people go down there, and it's a museum now. There's a music store on the first floor, and the studio's up on the second floor, and people go in there and make recordings because it's
Still.
Was it Herzog building?
Herzog. Yeah, that's it.
That's
Herzog. Yeah,
Yeah.
Herzog
See,
Studios.
it
That
takes
was
a
his name.
hysteria.
Right. Well, that's why we're in a historical society.
That's why he's the president. Okay. So
What did
anyhow,
I do? Oh, here it is.
are you saying that Bill Monroe?
So back in those days, they called this stuff country music, or they called it folk music.
Yeah.
But Bill Monroe, because he was a Kentuckian, he called his band the Bluegrass Boys. So they were the Bluegrass Boys from the 40s anyway on. But it took the bluegrass festivals that started happening outdoors before people started just calling that music bluegrass, which today they call, even old time music, they call it bluegrass, because you got a banjo, you got a fiddle, hey, that's bluegrass.
We say, yeah, we do. That's what you want.
And and nobody minds, you know. But old timers will say, no, we play old time music, and that's true. But even Lester Flatt said to Paul Warren once, he said, boy, Paul, that's what I call good old time fiddling.
Yeah. Wow.
And he was hard in the world of bluegrass music, you know. But they were just
Bill Monroe didn't play banjo though. He played.
no, he played the mandolin because that's all that was left. His brother Birch got the fiddle, and his brother Charlie got the guitar, and what was left was one of these, a violin with frets, basically.
He
That's what it
liked
is.
fiddle,
It's
though,
the
so he
same.
made it sound like a fiddle.
It's the same tuning as the violin, mandolin they call it, and they've been around for quite a while. They were
Flat
gourd they were bowl shaped usually.
That was the tater bug.
They called them tater bugs.
I've
They were
seen
like
enough
they were
tater
built like
bugs.
lutes were built in the old days, and
In my garden.
but a guy from Kalamazoo, Michigan, Orville Gibson, he perfected making the flat back, or what they called flat back. Actually, they're carved, and those took off. So
Play a Bill Monroe
Bill
song.
Monroe did anyway. So I'm going to do this one. This is something that Bill wrote and recorded, I think, in the 1950, and it's called "I'm on My Way Back to the Old Home."
Lonesome for Kentucky.
Back in the days of my childhood, In the evening when everything was still, I'd listen to the sound of the foxhounds with my dad in them old Kentucky hills. I'm on my way back to the old home. The road winds on up the hill, but there is no light in the window that shined long ago where I live. Soon my childhood days were over. I had to leave my old home. Mother and Dad were called to heaven. I'm out in this world all alone. I'm on my way back to the old home. The road winds on up the hill, but there is no light in the window that shined long ago where I live. High in the hills of old Kentucky stands the fondest place in my memory. I'm on my way back to the old home, the light in the window I long to see. I'm on my way back to the old home. The road winds on up the hill, but there is no light in the window that shined long ago where I live. Thank you. We
Now you have
tried to
5 minutes. to
stick
do
as
the
close
last
to
4
Bill Monroe
songs
as we
in
could
there.
get there. So
So you're from
Hey,
6:30
here we
to
go.
7:30, and we're trying to get it. I know you have to be out of here when the library closes before, but we've got.
they don't close till 8, right? You want to do
No.
Thinking of Tonight? I can do it with the mandolin if you want.
No. Well,
Oh, shucks. This is cool.
boy.
You don't mind. So
Go on.
one of the songs that kept popping up, one of the melodies that kept popping up was the melody for Roy Acuff's song "The Great Speckled Bird," the Hank Thompson
We're
song
trying to
"The
get to
Wild
the
Side of
commercial part
Life,"
of country now,
and the Kitty Wells song "It Wasn't God Who Made Honky Tonk Angels."
and
All of those songs borrowed a melody from the one we're going to do called
I'm thinking
I'm
tonight
Thinking
of My
Tonight.
Blue Eyes. This song has been recorded by every band. I mean, on the Opry, all with different words. It goes like this. It would have been better for us both had we lived in this one wicked world ever lived. For the trouble we both seen together, I am sure love will never forget. I'm thinking tonight of my blue eyes,
Who is Sailing Far Over the Sea. I'm thinking tonight of him only, and I wonder if he ever thinks of me.
Well, he told me once, dear, that you loved me, and you said that we never would part. But a link in that chain has been broken, leaving me with a sad and aching heart. I'm
Thinking tonight of my blue eyes, who is sailing far over the sea. I'm thinking tonight of him only, and I wonder if he ever thinks of me.
Auto harp.
thinks of me.
I'll do it, you get your fiddle. Get your fiddle. Now, Roy Acuff was real popular on the Grand Ole Opry.
Oh, yeah, we can't leave Roy out.
And I can't do the train whistle, but I bet somebody around here can do that, like, whatever you
I
do,
can't do
get
the
your
train.
cheeks up and I have a whistle at home now, that's the cheap way. Yeah. Oh, a harmonica. Oh, yeah. Well, we didn't bring one of those. Dang on it, can't do it.
David, get your harmonica out and play
Yeah,
it.
that's what I said. I just gotta go, woo,
No, I've got-
woo. Well, the train's coming down there into,
This train's coming in the key of G, so,
oh, is it?
yeah.
Okay, what station is it now? What is that station?
WSM.
No, not the train, not the radio station, the train station. Down there, this
What train station?
the Wabash.
There aren't any of those
Cannonball.
left anymore. Yeah. I said it's in G.
I'm in G. Oh. I'm gonna have.
There we go. She was just in A
I'm getting
flat.
wound up. My steam is just going. It sounded like a
From the great Atlantic Ocean to the wide Pacific shore, from the green flowing mountains and the south down by the shore. She's mighty tall, she's handsome, she's worn quite well by all. She's the regular combination called the Wabash Cannonball. Listen to the jingle, the rumble and the roll, as she glides along the woodlands through the hills and by the shore. Hear the mushy rush of the engine, hear the lonesome hobo squall. Traveling through the jungle, she's the Wabash Cannonball.
Do you have your harmonica in your pocket anywhere? That's not too far, is it? I'll sing us a couple more verses, huh? We like She Come
Let's
Down.
see.
She Come Down.
The eastern states are dandy, so the western people say. From New York to St. Louis and Chicago, by the way. From the hills of Minnesota, where the rippling waters fall, no changes can be taken on the Wabash Cannonball.
What do I say?
Listen to the jingle, the rumble and the roar, as she glides along the woodlands through the hills and by the shore. Hear the mighty rush of the engine, hear the lonesome hobo squall, traveling through the jungle on the Wabash Cannonball.
Next verse.
Now she